has the world's largest population, 2 Canadian hostages, internment camps for religious minorities, the second largest economy on the face of the earth, and a space program with eyes on going to Mars in 2020. So why the heck does Prime Minister Justin Trudeau send them millions of Canadian dollars in foreign aid? China has a population of 1.4 billion people, just ahead of India and 4 times that of the United States. China has the world's second largest economy. The Associated Press reports that the gross domestic product for China in 2018 was nearly 92 trillion yuan, or 13.1 trillion American dollars. The Chinese economy is expanding at an annual pace of 6%. That is astronomical. And China has a full-fledged space program with a goal of getting to Mars in 2020. I'm sure that's totally going to be benevolent and not part of some clandestine arms race. Economically speaking, China, well, they don't need our help, nor does China deserve our help. According to The Guardian, and this is a totally left-leaning source, China's Communist Party is waging a war on Christian churches, and more specifically, Catholic churches that are loyal to Rome as opposed to the Communist Party of China. The Chinese government is closing and destroying churches, locking up priests, and rewriting the Christian Bible through a completely communist lens. And Christians, they aren't alone. Muslim Uyghurs and Kazakhs are being sent to internment camps, re-education centers, and prisons meant to weaken their devotion to their faith and then redirect it towards the communist state. And now the Chinese state is scooping up children, residential school style, and sending nearly 500,000 Uyghurs and Kazakh children to be indoctrinated in what the Chinese government ironically calls boarding schools. China has also kidnapped 2 Canadians, Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig. The 2 were detained a year ago and then were formally arrested for spying back in May. It's pretty evident that the 2 were kidnapped, in retaliation to Canada's arrest of a Huawei executive at the behest of the American government, and the 2 men have languished ever since, while said Huawei executive complains about the tediousness of her luxurious house arrest. Poor little thing. Maybe she'd like to trade places with the 2 Michaels for just a day. Now, according to the South China Morning Post, quoting the Globe and Mail, Global Affairs Canada, the government department responsible for diplomatic and consular relations, said it had been told about the arrests on Wednesday and opposed them. Canada strongly condemns their arbitrary arrest, as we condemned their arbitrary detention on December 10th, the department was quoted as saying in a statement published by the Globe and Mail. So why is Canada, and specifically Global Affairs Canada, dishing out millions of dollars in foreign aid to China? Let's take a look at these documents here. Now, these documents are a breakdown of Canada's foreign aid spending in the 2017-2018 fiscal year. And these documents are directly from that aforementioned ministry responsible for China relations, Global Affairs Canada. Now, China first appears on page 18 of these documents, where the authoritarian state received 1/100th of $1,000,000, so $10,000 from other government departments for something or other. That's some fine accounting right there. Anyway, so far, it's not a lot of money, but a penny in Canadian foreign aid to a communist country that punishes the religious and has kidnapped 2 Canadians is a penny too much, don't you think? But let's keep going, because we're not done yet. On page 30, we can see that China received 3.08 million Canadian tax dollars through Global Affairs Canada. And you'll notice beside China, there's a little number 4. We'll get to that number 4 in a second, but first, let's keep going through the Canadian tax dollars China received from Trudeau and Minister Chrystia Freeland in 2017-2018. On this appendix on page 32, we can see that China repaid some sort of loan they received from Export Development Canada to the tune of $20.43 million. Again, Why is Canada lending the world's second largest economy money? On page 33, we can see that China received $600,000 from Global Affairs Canada as part of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation and Security Threat Reduction Program. Security threat reduction? Then they kidnapped 2 Canadians. Okay, let's go back to that little number 4 beside China in that one appendix. It's explained on page 31. China received a significant amount of multilateral aid from organizations Canada supports, such as the Global Environment Facility and the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis, and Malaria, and has also received funding for the implementation of the Montreal Protocol. Now, the Montreal Protocol is the global agreement to get off CFCs, a banned chemical that the world used to use to make foam insulation. So China is getting other Canadian money after it passes through other hands first that isn't being counted in these documents. Oh, and about the Montreal Protocol that the Chinese government got Canadian funding to implement, yeah, that's money well wasted. You see, the Environmental Investigation Agency claims to have found evidence of at least 18 companies in mainland China still using CFCs. And those claims have been backed up by the University of Bristol in England, which tracked the atmospheric rise in CFCs back to 2 provinces in eastern China. So what has China been doing with the foreign aid funding to implement the Montreal Protocol, or I guess anything else we sent them money for that matter? Well, I would suspect that China is using Canadian foreign aid to persecute their own people. And I would also suspect that the foreign aid levels to China are going to remain the same or increase in 2020. I'm willing to be surprised by Justin Trudeau, but like you, I'm already disappointed in the way his government has handled the Chinese threat to the free world. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. Rebel News has big plans in 2020 to hold the government to account on behalf of the people. But unlike so many of our competitors, we won't take a dime in government bailout cash. To support us in 2020, please go to standwithrebelnews.com.